You didn't hear it from me, but we have secret new products. Do you want to have a secret meeting about those secret products?
Go on.
Okay, so the all-new Pod 4 is coming out, and it's super awesome. It's got awesome new features like buttons and stuff.
Go on.
Yeah, it's so awesome, mostly because we listened to the community, mostly because you wouldn't shut up and you never stopped complaining, but we listened, and that's the important part. And we want you to test it.
Go on. That's it. That's all we wanted.
Oh.
Okay.
Yes.
What's up, superhumans? BT here. Man, I am pumped to share with you the brand new 8 Sleep Pod 4 and all of the awesome new features, because there are quite a bit. They've radically redesigned this thing. Before we do, a quick little housekeeping. Number one, they sent this to me for free of charge. I get to keep it, and I am, because it's replacing my Pod 3. Number two, this is not a sponsored video. They did not pay me, no money exchanged hands. Number three, this is not a review. One, I haven't had it nearly long enough to give you a good review. And 3B, this is more of just a introduction of all of those cool new features, all right? I'm going to be one of the multiple people you see on YouTube who were given an 8 Sleep to be a part of this campaign, to introduce you to the new Pod 4. Obviously, I'm gonna have a little bit of bias because I've had the Pod 2, the Pod 3, a second Pod 3, well, we have one in the guest bedroom, and now the Pod 4. Just take that, take my opinion with a grain of salt is all I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's tear down the Pod 3, install this one, and then we can talk about it. All right, I'll see you in a second. Well, it's been about a week since I started using the Pod 4 on this bed. And initially I said it wasn't going to be a comparison, but I think it makes more sense to compare it to the Pod 3 to see the actual changes that were made. So obviously we're going to be looking at the pods themselves to see the physical changes that were made, but also if there were any performance improvements. We're going to be looking at the covers because they're quite a bit different, and they've added some cool features and some not so cool features. We're going to be taking a look at the app to see what is new for the Pod 4, and also we're going to be checking out the Pod 4 Ultra. It's not what I have here. I'll explain why I don't have it. And then finally, we're going to basically assess whether or not you should be upgrading from the Pod 3. And if you decide to, how much will it cost? Because it is kind of confusing. Anyway, I guess that's it. Let's get to it. Before you, we have the Pod 3 and the Pod 4. Normally I would sit in between them, but I think it's more beneficial for you to see them side by side. Here's the Pod 3 and the Pod 4. You can see that the Pod 4 is bigger. It's a little taller, it's the same width, and it's a little longer. But there are also some other big differences. Let's flip them around and start with the rear. Well, actually, let's just start with these. The tanks are exactly the same. This still has water in it. Tanks are exactly the same. They're just a different color. The Pod 4 is black, kind of like a satin black, whereas the Pod 3 was a dark gray. Felt on the front is exactly the same. Like I said, just bigger, and you'll see a performance boost with that. We'll talk about that here in a second. So let's flip these around. The big change that you'll see is the massive vent on the back. As opposed to the single fan in the rear of the Pod 3, you now have two of those big fans, which actually makes for a quieter experience. It can keep the unit cooler longer, and they're big like computer fans, because think of them as like supercomputers for your bed. The other massive change that I really like and it's kind of hard to see, is on the bottom, the plugs now face outwards, which just makes installing the cover so much easier. You're not going up and trying to plug up, you're just going straight back. So I really like the change here, but all of the ports and the plug structure is exactly the same. You can see on the Pod 3 how you have to go up, and it's actually kind of a tight fit right here. This thing is resting on the ground. The cover clip is about that thick, and you're like, oh, can I feel it? This is just so much easier. On the side, you can also see a change. For the Pod 4, you have these massive vents right here that also help with cooling. On the Pod 3, it's this smaller vent down here on the bottom. All right, what about performance improvements? One of the things that I told one of the things I told 8 Sleep when they came to me and they were like, hey, we're making a new pod. Do you have any input? I was like, it's gotta be faster to hit temperature. It's awesome that it hits temperature and it can stay there the whole night, but it's taking too long. And they definitely improved it on the Pod 4. I don't have like technical data, I'm sorry, but I can just feel the change. I can feel how much quicker it is to get me from 0 to -10 on the Pod 4 compared to the Pod 3. And same thing with heating up. My wife said the same thing. So big improvements on Pod 4. They had to go bigger to do it, but you're getting those improvements, and I like all the changes that they've made.
The covers are probably where the biggest differences are between the Pod 3 and the Pod 4.
Your growling is interrupting this video. Be quiet.
All right, so if you can see this, here's one of the major changes. On the Pod 3, they used a grid. They're like 1 inch by 1 inch squares. If I move them around, you can kind of see where that grid is, but you can see like the spaces and the structure in between. The cover itself is pretty thick, and it's also really heavy. Another major change is just how they attached it to your bed and the fit. So on the Pod 3, you can see they used a zipper. So they used a piece that went on the bottom of the bottom portion of the bed, and then this went on top of it, and you zipped it down to the bed. It made for a very tight fit, which was nice. I liked it. It's very clean, but it made for a really heavy cover. All right, so the biggest change is the grid, the weight, and this zipper. Let's go check out the Pod 4.
Let me emphasize that there's nothing wrong with the Pod 3. It's awesome. There were huge improvements with the Pod 3 compared to the Pod 2. The Pod 2 was slow. The Pod 2 didn't cover enough surface area. The Pod 3, using those little grids, made sure that you didn't get any cold spots, and it was very comfortable. The Pod 4, however, is radically different. I've got to take off some of the sheets here on the bed so I can show you. I'd say there are 3 major changes when it comes to the Pod 4 cover compared to the Pod 3. Number 1 is the fit. You put it on the bed in an entirely different way. It's like a giant fitted mattress sheet, which means way less stress when putting it on. It is 10 times faster to cover the bed. The other one had that complicated zipper system, made for a really clean look because it got so tight around your bed, but it was just kind of a pain in the butt to put on. This one is much easier. Number 2, I don't know how they did it, but they kept it as soft as the other one, but there is no grid and it's thinner. So you can't even feel the tubes in this one. Like, you could feel the grid, you could actually see the grid, I just showed you. On this, no such thing. The grid pattern, well, it's not even a grid anymore. It's like a giant figure 8 without it actually intersecting. And so this has made for faster temperature increase and decrease times as well. This is probably the biggest and most requested update to the cover since I started using 8 Sleep 3 years ago with the Pod 2. You know, my original complaint with the Pod 2 is that it didn't have physical buttons on the pod that I could change the temperature. I didn't want to go into the app. Pulling up the app and having all the blue light come in just made me more awake. It made no sense that there weren't physical buttons. But here we are, Pod 4, a few years later, and we have something that's actually better than the idea I have. It's great in so many ways, and it falls short in a couple of ways. We'll talk about that here in a second. But anyway, this is your haptic sensor. This little block right here that you can see me outline. To help you like find this sensor in the middle of the night, they've put like these raised rubber lines right here, and I really like that idea. The reason it's better than my idea is because it's here on the bed and not on the pod. Like an idiot, if 2 people are sharing this single pod, because that's how 8 Sleep does it, the person on the other side of the bed would have to get up and walk all the way around. And if you have a nightstand, maybe that's even too far for you to reach. So having the control on the bed itself is a much smarter idea. How do you get it to work? Well, 2 taps makes the bed colder by 1 increment. 3 taps makes the bed warmer by 1 increment. And you know if you've done it right because you will get a corresponding vibration in the cover, right? The cover already has the vibration. You can use it as an alarm. You can also use this sensor to snooze your alarm in the morning if you want. Okay, I took my microphone off because I'm going to put it on the bed, and hopefully you can hear it working when I do the taps. Just a second. Did you hear that? So it did 2 for cooling down, and then 3 short ones for heating it up. All right, here's where I think this unit there's a couple of things that they might have over-engineered. The double tap is great, and the vibration's great to let me know that it worked. However, the tapping sometimes has to be hard enough, and the vibration certainly is hard enough that the other person can feel it. My wife has woken up on the occasion or 2 from the vibration, and I've felt it when she's done it. Now, that being said, autopilot works so well that you probably won't have to use this that much. So if you don't have autopilot and you get a Pod 4, it might be worth it to get autopilot so you don't have to interact with this that often. Number 2, I think I'm on point number 2. It can be really hard in the middle of the night to know how hard to hit this. And sometimes, like that worked. So that's very sensitive. But sometimes in the middle of the night, maybe you have to raise it and you go, and the last 2 taps were hard enough, but the first one wasn't. And you've just lowered the temperature. And so now you're like, crap, I got to do this 2 more times. There has been one time where it was like 1 out of 4 that I was getting it. Eventually I had to go into the bathroom, open the app, and just change it manually. If it were me, hear me out, 8 Sleep. This is awesome, but just 2 buttons, like 2 clicky buttons. One here, one here. I want to warm it. I want to cool it. That's how I would have done it. But that's me. I'm not an engineer. They've probably tested it and they probably had reasons why they couldn't do it that way. Anyway, so that is the last major change to the Pod 4 cover. There's another minor change. I showed it earlier. They put like a filter on the cable, like the tubes that plug into the Pod 4, and that helps with the priming, and it's one of the reasons why the installation time of this thing is so quick compared to the Pod 3. Anyway, let's check out the app now because some of the new tech can be seen in the metrics in your app.
We all know that there is some seriously cool tech in the 8 Sleep Pod 4, no pun intended. But how does that cool tech affect us? How does it affect our performance? Well, we can see how it's all working right here in the 8 Sleep app. Down along the bottom, there are 4 categories. We've got our home base, our temperature setting. This is where we can change our sleep schedule, our temperature sleep schedule. We can turn autopilot on or off. One thing about this sleep schedule that I love is it's based on the sleep stage that you're in, right? REM sleep, deep sleep. All of this is temperature controlled based on that sleep stage. And it works because the 8 Sleep has imperceivably small sensors built into the cover that are tracking all of your vitals throughout the night. We're gonna get into that here in a second. The next thing that we have is our alarm clocks. There are 2 different kinds of alarms that are built into your bed. One, it uses that vibration we talked about earlier that can vibrate to wake you up, or my preferred method of waking up is the warm awake. So I can actually make the bed warm up at a certain time to gently wake me up. That's the way I like to roll. And finally, here are all the metrics. So when you wake up, you can see just how good of a night's sleep you got and how that's going to affect you. So at the top, I've got my sleep fitness score. It's just giving me an overall rating of my sleep. Below that, I can see the quality of sleep I got, my routine, how well I stuck to my sleep routine, and then also the time I slept. 6 hours, that's about average for me. The quality of sleep, it breaks it down into a hypnogram between awake, REM, light, and deep sleep. I can see how long I spent in REM sleep, an hour, deep sleep, hour and 27 minutes. Below that, this is gonna show me my heart rate metrics. So I've got my resting heart rate, I've got my HRV, heart rate variability, and then also my breath rate or respiratory rate. That's how many breaths you're taking per minute. I'm gonna skip this next one. We'll come back to that here in a second. My routine, that's sleep consistency, sleep latency below that, and then time slept. So we just skipped over something, but it's really big. It's new for the Pod 4, and that is snoring. One of the cool things that it does now is that it can detect snoring. And if you want to take this to another level, that's when you would get the Pod 4 Ultra. Now, I don't have the Pod 4 Ultra. What is it? Well, it's a frame that rests between your bed frame and your mattress. And this frame can adjust the height of the head, the knees, the legs, the feet, etc. If you have autopilot and you snore, it will detect the snoring and automatically raise that up just enough to get you to stop snoring. So it's got snoring mitigation. I think that's ingenious. I wish I could put it into the purple frame that we have, but we can't. So if you snore a lot and you're looking for a way to stop it without you even knowing it's being stopped, this is an awesome way to go. Okay, we've come to that bit of the video where I tell you the prices and you figure out whether or not this is a good investment for you. And just so you know, when this video comes out, the Pod 3 with Perfect Fit, Pod 4, and Pod 4 Ultra will all be available, all right? Pod 3 with Perfect Fit is going to run you $2,245. And these prices are all for the queen, so it's gonna be less for a smaller bed and more for a bigger bed. The Pod 4 is gonna be $2,549, $300 more. The Pod 4 Ultra is going to be $4,049. Now, here's where things get a little interesting, a little more interesting. There is a discount code down in the description. That is my discount code. If you use it, you're gonna save even more money. I think it's an extra $100, and it's stackable upon the discount that is being listed on the website. I do get a kickback. You should know that. I do get a kickback, but it doesn't cost you anything to use it, all right? It's just helping the channel out.
Of course, just a few hours before this video is released, 8 Sleep tells me they're going to run a special promotion for people that are actually already members. So if you go into your 8 Sleep app, hit the menu, those are the 3 bars up at the top right, click shop, you're gonna be able to save $500 extra on your Pod 4 or your Pod 4 Ultra. Okay, that's it. Back to the video.
Now with all of that information, what do I recommend? Because you're gonna ask, like, which one should I get? And these are just my recommendations, all right? You need to do what's best for you. If you are a Pod 3 owner, I'd say skip the update. There's some great upgrades, but I think you're doing just fine. I don't think you need to upgrade just yet. Unless, here's the big caveat, unless you are a person who snores a lot. and you're having the disputes with the spouse about snoring, that's where going to the Pod 4 Ultra could be worth it. That's where I would seriously consider the Pod 4 Ultra, because the Pod 4 Ultra, unlike the Pod 3 and Pod 4, can do something about snoring. So it's going to detect snoring in the app between all three, but only the Pod 4 Ultra has the platform that can adjust and help you stop snoring in the middle of the night without you having to do anything via autopilot. All right. Now, if you haven't invested into a pod at all, if this is your first time getting an 8 Sleep product, right to the Pod 4 in a heartbeat. For that extra $300, I totally think it's worth it for the new updated cover, all of the cooling power increases, the quieter pod, the haptic, the tap to control, totally worth the $300. All right, that's it. Hopefully the information was helpful. If so, please let me know by hitting the like button. And if you do have a question, please post that down in the comments below. I try my hardest to answer every single one. Finally, if you can do me a solid, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It keeps the lights on. It allows me to make more videos like this. But thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.